The sharp crack of Admiral Derek Stone's laughter cut through the main corridor of Naval Amphibious Base Little Creek like a blade through silk. The sound bounced off polished floors, echoed against concrete walls, carried the particular cruelty of a man who'd spent 20 years clawing toward power and finally held it in his fist. "Hey, sweetheart." His voice boomed across the corridor, stopping conversations mid-sentence, turning heads like dominoes, falling in sequence. "What's your call sign, Mop Lady?" The group of senior officers surrounding him erupted. Commander Victoria Hayes threw her head back, teeth flashing white against the fluorescent lights. Lieutenant Marcus Webb crossed his arms, satisfaction spreading across his face like oil on water. Chief Thomas Braddock doubled over, slapping his thigh hard enough to echo. 40 personnel in that corridor. SEALs fresh from morning PD, their shirts still dark with sweat. Training instructors carrying clipboards and stopwatches. Administrative staff with coffee cups paused halfway to lips. All of them turned. All of them watched. The woman they were mocking didn't look up. Small, maybe 5'4" on a generous day. Auburn hair pulled back in a ponytail so tight it looked painful. Green eyes fixed on the mop handle in her hands. She wore the standard maintenance crew uniform, navy blue coveralls that hung loose on her frame, making her look even smaller than she was. The name patch over her left breast read Voss in faded letters. She continued pushing the mop across the floor. Steady strokes, methodical, the kind of repetitive motion that becomes invisible after 8 months of watching it every day. Nothing about her suggested she was anything other than what she appeared. Just another worker keeping the base clean. Just another invisible person doing an invisible job. But Master Chief Griffin Lawson, standing near the equipment checkout counter, felt ice slide down his spine. He'd seen that stance before. 62 years old, 38 of them in uniform. And he knew the way she held that mop grip placement, just slightly wrong for cleaning, just slightly right for something else entirely. Shoulder angle, weight distribution, feet positioned like she was ready to move in any direction without telegraphing intent. That wasn't a janitor's stance. That was an operator's stance. "Come on, don't be shy." Stone pressed closer, his dress shoes clicking against the polished floor. Each step deliberate, performed. The man was playing to his audience now, feeding on their attention like oxygen. "Everyone here has a call sign. What's yours? Squeegee floor wax pledge." More laughter rippled through the crowd. Someone's phone came out, the subtle shift of a camera angle. This was going to be shared later, sent around in group chats. A funny story about the Admiral breaking balls. The woman finally paused. She straightened slowly. For just a moment, less than a second, something flickered across her face. Not anger, not embarrassment. Something colder than either. Something that made Lawson's hand unconsciously move toward where his sidearm used to hang before he'd been assigned to training duty. Then it was gone. She lowered her head and returned to mopping. Lawson watched her eyes. That was the tell. Most people don't notice eyes. They see faces, expressions, body language. But eyes tell the truth that mouths lie about. Her eyes swept the corridor in a pattern he recognized immediately. Left corner high, right corner high, center mass low, exits, potential threats, 3-second intervals. Perfect tactical scanning. The kind drilled into operators until it becomes as automatic as breathing. Until you do it in your sleep. Until you can't stop doing it even when you want to. She wasn't looking at dirt on the floor. She was maintaining situational awareness of every person, every movement, every potential danger in her environment. "Sergeant," Commander Hayes' voice carried that particular cruelty of someone who'd fought hard for her position and resented anyone she perceived as weak. "You defending the help now? Maybe she needs a strong man to speak for her." The woman's jaw tightened, almost imperceptible. You'd miss it if you weren't looking. But Lawson was looking. He'd been looking since that laughter started. Something about this whole situation felt wrong, felt dangerous in a way that had nothing to do with physical threat and everything to do with consequences not yet visible. Lieutenant Webb pushed off from the wall where he'd been lounging, all swagger and easy confidence. The kind of confidence that comes from being good at your job and knowing it. The kind that can curdle into arrogance without you noticing the transition. "Actually, I'm curious now." He gestured toward the weapons rack visible through the nearby armory window. 3 rifles mounted in perfect sequence, locked behind reinforced glass. "Hey you, maintenance lady, since you're cleaning our facilities, maybe you can tell us what those are called." He pointed at the first rifle, then the second, then the third, the challenge clear, the trap obvious. She'd get them wrong. They'd laugh harder. The video would be even funnier. The woman looked up slowly, Her eyes dark green like deep water focused on the weapons with an intensity that made Lawson's breath catch in his throat. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but clear. Each word enunciated with the precision of someone who'd given radio reports under fire. M4 carbine with ACOG optic, M16A4 with standard iron sights, HK416 with EO Tech holographic sight. The corridor went quiet, not the comfortable quiet of people waiting for a punchline. The uncomfortable quiet of people realizing the joke just shifted and they're not sure who the punchline is about anymore. Those weren't civilian names. Those weren't the kind of designations you picked up from watching action movies or playing video games. Those were proper military designations. Specific, technical, the kind of knowledge that comes from handling those weapons so many times that their names become second nature. Webb's smirk faltered. Just slightly. Just enough. Lucky guess, Chief Braddock sneered, stepping forward. He was a thick man used to using his size to intimidate. Used to people stepping back when he moved forward. Probably heard some jarhead use those words. Probably thinks that makes her special. As if to punctuate his dismissal, he deliberately kicked over her mop bucket. Gray water spread across the polished floor. Moving fast, heading straight for a metal clipboard that had been sitting on a nearby desk. The clipboard tip started to fall, headed directly for the spreading puddle. What happened next occurred so fast that several witnesses would later argue about the exact sequence, would draw diagrams trying to explain how physics worked, would slow down the phone footage frame by frame and still not quite believe what they were seeing. The bucket tipped, the water spread, the clipboard fell, and the woman moved. Her hand shot out and caught the clipboard 6 inches from the water. Not grabbed at it, not fumbled for it, caught it. Clean pluck from the air with the kind of hand-eye coordination that required thousands of hours of training. The kind of reflexes that meant the difference between life and death when a grenade rolled into your fighting position. When you had 0.3 seconds to react or die. The corridor went quiet for 3 full seconds. No one breathed. No one moved. The water continued spreading, making soft sounds against the tile. Somewhere down the hall, a door closed. The sounds seemed to come from miles away. Then Stone laughed again, but it sounded forced this time. Hollow, like he was trying to convince himself more than anyone else. Good catch. Maybe you should try out for the softball team. Young Corporal Anderson, part of the maintenance crew and the only person who'd tried to befriend the quiet woman in the 8 months she'd worked there, stepped forward. His voice shook slightly. Youth and uncertainty and the knowledge that what he was about to do could cost him. Admiral, sir, with respect. Maybe we should... Corporal. Stone didn't even look at him. Did someone ask for your input? No, sir. Then keep your mouth shut. Stone turned back to the woman who had already retrieved a second mop and was cleaning up the spilled water with the same methodical efficiency she brought to everything. Watching her, you'd never know what had just happened. Never know that she'd just demonstrated reflexes that belonged in a different uniform, in a different life. You know what? Stone's voice carried that edge now. That hint of mean that comes out when someone realizes they might not be in control of the situation anymore. When they double down instead of backing off. I'm curious about something. You've got all access clearance. That's unusual for maintenance. She reached into her pocket without pausing in her work, pulled out her badge. The magnetic strip gleamed under the fluorescent lights. She held it out, not looking at him, just offering it like she'd done 100 times before at security checkpoints. Level 5 clearance. Full base access including restricted training areas, including classified briefing rooms, including sections of this facility that most of the officers in this corridor couldn't enter without special authorization. Webb snatched it from her hand, turned it over, examined it like he was looking for a forgery, like there had to be an explanation because the alternative didn't make sense. How does a cleaner get level 5? His voice had lost its swagger. Now he just sounded confused, almost worried. Background check cleared 8 months ago. Her voice remained level, steady, the voice of someone answering questions because protocol demanded it, not because she felt any need to justify herself. You can verify with security. From the second-floor medical office, Dr. Emily Bradford watched the scene unfold with growing unease. She'd treated this woman twice in the past 8 months. Once for a scraped knuckle that looked suspiciously like the kind of injury you got from hitting something very hard. Once for what appeared to be an old shoulder injury acting up. Both times the woman had demonstrated an unusually high pain tolerance. Both times she demonstrated an encyclopedic knowledge of field medicine. Knew exactly what tests Bradford should run, knew the proper treatment protocols. Bradford had noted it in her personal log, but hadn't thought much of it. People came from all kinds of backgrounds. Maybe she'd been an EMT before. Maybe she'd taken some medical courses. Now watching the predatory circle of senior officers around one small woman, Bradford felt her instincts screaming that something was very wrong with this picture. Stone was warming to his game now. He could feel the crowd's attention, could feel the weight of his recent promotion. He'd spent 20 years clawing his way up the SEAL command structure, 20 years of being passed over, of watching younger men get promoted ahead of him, of biting his tongue and smiling and waiting his turn. Now he finally had the respect he deserved. This was his base, his command, his moment. Tell you what, sweetheart, he smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. Since you seem to know so much about our weapons, why don't you explain proper maintenance procedure for that M4 you identified? Shouldn't be too hard for someone with all-access clearance, right? The woman set down her mop, carefully, precisely, the way you'd set down an object if you wanted to be able to pick it up again quickly. She walked to the armory window and pointed at the rifle without touching the glass. Barrel requires cleaning every 200 to 300 rounds, more frequently in desert environments due to sand infiltration. Bolt carrier group should be cleaned and lubricated every 500 rounds minimum. Gas tube requires inspection, but not cleaning unless malfunction occurs. Buffer spring needs replacement every 5,000 rounds, or is indicated by failure to return to battery. Magazine springs are the most common point of failure and should be rotated regularly. Webb's face had gone from smug to uncertain. That was word for word from the armorer's manual. Not paraphrased, not close, exact. The kind of exact that comes from having read it so many times that it's burned into your memory, or from having taught it so many times that you could recite it in your sleep. Anyone can memorize words, but his voice had lost its edge, had that defensive quality now. The sound of someone trying to convince themselves they're still right. Memory doesn't mean understanding. You want practical demonstration? She turned to face him directly for the first time. Her eyes met his, held them. No challenge, no anger. Just the flat gaze of someone asking a simple question. Sure, Stone waved at the armory sergeant. Staff Sergeant Collins had been quietly watching the whole exchange from his position behind the weapons counter. He was a grizzled veteran, 23 years in service, had seen enough bullshit to fill a library. He didn't like where this was going. Didn't like the whole situation. But orders were orders, and an admiral was an admiral. Get that M4 out here. Let's see what the help knows about weapon handling. Collins retrieved the M4, cleared it with practiced efficiency muscle memory from performing the action 10,000 times. Locked the bolt to the rear, placed it on the counter between them. He looked uncomfortable, like a man watching a car accident happen in slow motion and unable to stop it. The woman approached the weapon. Her hands moved before Lawson could even process what he was seeing. Field strip. The rifle came apart in a blur of controlled motion, upper receiver separated from lower. Bolt carrier group extracted. Firing pin removed. Bolt broken down. Charging handle. Buffer spring, every component laid out in perfect sequence in 11.2 seconds. Lawson knew that time because he'd unconsciously checked his watch. 11.2 seconds. The SEAL qualification standard was 15 seconds. The Special Forces standard was 13. Only Tier 1 operators consistently broke 12. She reassembled it in 9.8 seconds. The corridor had gone absolutely silent. Even Stone had stopped smiling. Even the people who'd been recording had lowered their phones just watching now, trying to process what they'd just witnessed. Lieutenant Commander James Brooks, a SEAL team instructor who'd just arrived for his shift, stopped dead in the corridor entrance. He'd seen that disassembly speed exactly once before, in a classified briefing about force recon selection standards, in a video that was marked top secret and shown only to senior instructors as an example of what elite looked like. His eyes narrowed as he studied the small woman who was calmly handing the weapon back to Sergeant Collins. The woman who moved like water, who breathed in controlled patterns even under pressure, who had just demonstrated a skill level that belonged behind locked doors and classified briefings. Lucky, Webb finally said, but even he didn't sound convinced anymore. Probably practices that party trick at home, probably spends weekends at the range playing soldier. Want me to do it blindfolded? She asked the question with no arrogance, no challenge, pure factual inquiry, like offering to do a math problem on a chalkboard. Before anyone could respond, Colonel Marcus Devlin arrived with his inspection team. 3 Pentagon observers doing their quarterly facility review. He took one look at the crowd, the disassembled weapon being reassembled, the woman in maintenance uniform holding it, and his expression darkened. What exactly is going on here? Stone smoothed his uniform, put on his professional face. The transition was instant, like flipping a switch. Just some entertainment, Colonel. Maintenance worker here was showing off some skills. Thought we'd verify her claimed expertise in a professional setting. Devlin's eyes swept the scene with the practiced assessment of a career officer. He saw the wet floor, the kicked bucket lying on its side, the circle of smirking senior officers around one small woman. His lips thinned into a line that suggested he'd seen this kind of thing before, and it never ended well. And this seemed like appropriate use of command time. With respect, sir, we were simply... I didn't ask for your justification, Admiral. I asked what was going on. Devlin's attention fixed on the woman, really looked at her for the first time, saw past the uniform and the mop in the wet floor, saw something that made his expression shift from annoyed to concerned. Your name and position. She met his eyes calmly, no fear, no nervousness. Just the steady gaze of someone used to being questioned by senior officers. Marin Voss, maintenance crew, 8 months on base. And you have weapons handling certification because... Previous employment, sir. What previous employment? I'd prefer not to say sir. The words hung in the air, loaded, heavy, the kind of statement that tells you everything by telling you nothing. Previous employment that she can't or won't discuss. Previous employment that gave her skills most people in this corridor would train years to acquire. Previous employment that came with level 5 clearance. Before Devlin could push further, Braddock stepped forward to board. He'd been watching the whole exchange with growing concern. Watching the way the colonel looked at Voss. Watching the way the dynamic had shifted from entertainment to investigation. He needed to regain control. Needed to redirect attention. Colonel, I think we should verify her credentials. This is starting to smell like stolen valor. Some people like to play dress up with skills they don't actually have. Like to pretend they're something they're not because it makes them feel important. Marin's expression didn't change, but Lawson saw her shoulders shift, almost imperceptibly, into a more balanced stance. Combat ready. She didn't even know she was doing it. It was automatic. Trained response to perceived threat. Fine. Devlin's voice carried the weight of command. The sound of someone who'd made 10,000 decisions and stood by every one. Someone call security. Let's verify these credentials she's so reluctant to discuss. While they waited, Hayes circled closer, her instinct for social dominance kicking in. She'd spent her entire career fighting to be taken seriously as a female SEAL, had endured hell to earn her trident, had pushed herself harder than any man just to be considered equal. And now here was this quiet janitor who moved like an operator but wore a maintenance uniform. It offended something deep in Hayes, something she couldn't quite name. You know what I think, Hayes's voice dripped poison. I think you're one of those groupies who hangs around bases trying to get attention from real operators. Maybe you dated some enlisted guy who taught you a few tricks. Maybe he let you play with his rifle a couple times and now you think you're special. Now you think you belong here. Petty Officer Jake Morrison, a fresh SEAL graduate who'd been watching in uncomfortable silence, noticed something the senior officers had missed. The woman's breathing pattern hadn't changed once during the entire confrontation. Box breathing, 4 count in, 4 count hold, 4 count out, 4 count hold. The stress management technique they'd spent weeks learning in BUD/S. The technique that separated operators from everyone else. The ability to control your autonomic nervous system under pressure. She was doing it automatically, without thought, without effort, like breathing itself. Security arrived. Senior Chief Williams, head of base security, carried a tablet with her full personnel file. He looked confused as he scrolled through screens, kept stopping, rereading, looking up at Marin, looking back at the tablet. Ma'am, he addressed her directly, not Stone. That alone told you something. Your file shows all certifications current, advanced weapons handling, tactical medical, combat driving, close quarters, combat, survival, evasion, resistance, escape. He looked up, eyes wide. Ma'am, this is an operator's qualification sheet, not maintenance. How did all legitimate? Devlin's voice cut through. He'd been reading over Williams's shoulder. His face had gone pale. Yes, sir. All verified through proper channels. Background check cleared by naval intelligence. No flags. No issues. But her employment record only goes back 8 months. Braddock protested. His voice had an edge of panic now. He needed this to be fake, needed her to be a fraud. Because if she wasn't, then what he'd done, what they'd all done, took on a different color. What was she doing before that? File doesn't say chief, just shows she was cleared for employment after standard background investigation. That's not standard. Hayes pushed forward. You don't get level 5 clearance in this qualification list without a service record. Where's her service record? Not in the file, ma'am. Stone saw his opportunity to regain control of the situation, to turn this from public humiliation into official business, to be clever about it instead of cruel. Then I propose a practical test. We've got the combat simulation range available right now. If Miss Voss here is really qualified for all these certifications, she should be able to demonstrate competency under observation. And if she can't, we file a report for falsifying credentials. Fair is fair. Brooks stepped out forward. Something about this whole situation was wrong. Wrong in a way that made his instructor instincts scream warnings. Admiral, I'm not sure that's... Are you questioning my judgment, Commander? Brooks met his superior's eyes. Calculated risk, calculated cost. Finally shook his head. No, sir. Good. Stone turned to Marin. His smile had returned. He'd found his angle. Miss Voss, you're invited to the range. Consider it a professional development opportunity. A chance to prove all these impressive qualifications are real. Unless you'd like to admit now that your credentials are questionable. Marin looked at him for a long moment. Her face showed nothing. No fear, no anger, no resignation. Just that same calm assessment. Like she was calculating variables. Running through scenarios. Making decisions based on factors no one else could see. Then quietly, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said one word. Sure. The word hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled, like the moment of silence between lightning and thunder, like the breath before the storm. And Master Chief Griffin Lawson, standing at the back of the crowd, felt a chill run through him that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. He'd served with her father, Master Sergeant Garrett Voss, Fallujah 2004, Desert Storm before that, had watched Garrett carry 3 wounded Marines through half a mile of hostile fire, had watched him earn the Navy Cross twice, had stood at his promotion ceremony when he made Master Sergeant. Garrett had mentioned a daughter once, just once, over drinks after a particularly bad operation. Said she'd joined Force Recon, said she was better than he'd ever been. Said it with pride and fear in equal measure. Lawson looked at this woman, really looked, saw the jawline, the way she carried herself, the particular shade of green in her eyes that he remembered from photographs Garrett kept in his wallet. And he realized with slowly dawning horror exactly who they'd just spent the last 20 minutes mocking. The group moved en masse toward the combat training facility. A small army of observers swept up in the promise of spectacle. Word spread through the base with the speed of wildfire. Within minutes, text messages flew. Group chats exploded. People changed direction mid-stride. By the time they reached the range, the observation gallery held more than 50 personnel. SEALs in training, instructors, administrative staff, even some civilian contractors who'd heard something interesting was happening and wanted to see. Everyone wanted to watch the janitor fail. Everyone wanted to see the woman who gotten uppity put back in her place. Everyone wanted the story they could tell later about the time some cleaner tried to pretend she was an operator and got exposed. Everyone except Lawson. He stood at the back of the gallery watching Marin walk calmly toward the range entrance, watching the way she moved, the way she scanned the room, the way her hands hung loose and ready at her sides. And he knew. He knew with the certainty of 38 years in uniform, they were about to witness something that would change everything. The range door closed behind her with a sound like a cell door locking, like a coffin lid closing, like the moment before battle when everything goes quiet and the only sound is your own heartbeat in your ears. In the observation gallery, Stone leaned forward with anticipation. Hayes crossed her arms with satisfaction. Webb pulled out his phone to record what he expected to be a humiliating failure. Braddock smiled, that cruel smile of someone watching justice about to be served. Only Lawson stood perfectly still. His hands gripped the railing so hard his knuckles went white. His breath came shallow and controlled, because he'd just remembered something else Garrett Voss had told him. Something spoken in confidence. Something that had seemed impossible at the time. My daughter has a call sign story, Garrett had said. Can't tell you what it is. It's classified above my clearance. But I can tell you this, there are only 23 operators in the entire history of Marine Force Recon who've earned that level of classification. They call it Ghost Unit. and my baby girl is one of them. Lawson watched Marin Voss disappear into the range, watched the door close, watched the test begin, and thought God help them all. They have no idea what they just started. The Range Master Senior Chief Anthony Kowalski met them at the entrance. 58 years old, 15 years running this facility. He'd seen every kind of shooter walk through these doors. Hotshots who thought they were God's gift to marksmanship. Nervous recruits on their first live fire. Stone-cold professionals who treated weapons like extensions of their own bodies. He knew what real looked like, and he knew what fake looked like. One look at Marin Voss, and every instinct in his body started screaming, "Admiral, we need proper safety briefings. If you're bringing in an untrained..." "She's got qualifications." Stone cut him off. His voice carried that edge of irritation, the sound of someone who'd made a decision and didn't want it questioned. "Just set up the standard operator assessment." Kowalski looked at Marin, really looked. Saw the way she stood, the way her eyes tracked movement in the room, the way her hands hung at her sides, relaxed but ready. He'd been doing this job for 15 years. He knew what a faker looked like when they walked onto a range. The bravado that covered fear, the swagger that hid incompetence, the loud confidence that screamed insecurity. This woman wasn't faking anything. "Yes, sir." His voice carried reluctance. "What level difficulty?" "Let's start simple." Stone gestured magnanimously, like he was being generous. "Static target shooting. Then we'll escalate if she's actually competent." The armory offered standard training weapons, M4 carbines, M9 pistols, Sig Sauer P 226S standard issue, standard configuration, the kind of weapons everyone on base trained with. Marin walked past all of them, walked straight to the secure locker at the back of the room, the one that held the specialized weapons, the ones that required additional certification, the ones that most people on base never touched. "May I?" She directed the question to Kowalski. Not Stone, not the other officers. To the range master, the person actually in charge of this space. Proper protocol, proper respect for the chain of command. Kowalski nodded curtly. She opened the locker and removed a Barrett M82A1, 50 caliber anti-materiel rifle, 29 pounds unloaded, designed to punch through engine blocks at 1,000 meters, designed to disable light armored vehicles, designed for specialists who spent months learning to handle the recoil without dislocating their shoulders. Webb actually laughed out loud. The sound echoed through the range. Sharp, mean, delighted. "You can't be serious. That thing weighs more than you do." She lifted it with proper carry technique, weight distributed perfectly across her frame, muscles engaging in sequence. No strain, no visible effort. Just smooth, practiced movement that spoke of having done this exact action hundreds of times. The rifle looked absurd in her small hands, like watching a child pick up an adult's weapon. Several people in the gallery pulled out phones. This was going to be viral. This was going to be the kind of video that got shared in every military group chat. Marin walked to the firing line, set the rifle down with care, began her pre-fire checklist with methodical precision. Lawson closed his eyes briefly. He'd fired a Barrett exactly once in his career, during specialized training in Desert Storm. The recoil had bruised his shoulder for a week, had made him grateful he wasn't a sniper, had given him immense respect for the operators who used these weapons as tools of their trade. He opened his eyes and watched this woman, daughter of his old friend, prepare to fire a weapon that could break bones if handled incorrectly. "Target distance?" Marin asked. Her voice carried clearly. No nervousness, no bravado, just professional inquiry. 800 meters, Stone said it generously, like he was being fair. 800 meters with a Barrett for anyone except specialized snipers was nearly impossible. The weapon was designed for it, but the shooter had to be equally specialized. He was giving her enough rope to hang herself publicly. "Let's see what you can do." She loaded a single round, settled into prone position. The movement was fluid. Practiced. Her body knew exactly how to position itself, knew where every point of contact needed to be, knew how to become part of the weapon system rather than just the person behind it. She looked through the scope, her breathing slowed into that trained rhythm Morrison had noticed earlier. 10 seconds passed. 15. She was reading the wind, calculating drop, measuring every variable, temperature, humidity, atmospheric pressure. All the invisible forces that turn a straight line into a curved path over long distance. The shot cracked like thunder. 800 meters downrange, the center of the target exploded. Paper and backing material disintegrated. The hit was so perfect, so dead center, that for a moment no one in the gallery spoke. They just stared at the monitor showing the target camera feed. Kowalski checked through the spotting scope. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Dead center, perfect shot. Stone's jaw worked. He looked like a man who'd just bet everything on red and watched the ball land on black. Different distance. Make it 1,200 meters. 3 more shots. Marin adjusted her position. Made minute changes to the scope. Loaded 3 more rounds with the same careful precision. No rush. No hesitation. Just the smooth movements of someone who'd done this so many times that speed came from efficiency rather than hurry. 3 shots. 3 perfect hits. She adjusted for wind for distance for the slight elevation difference between firing position and target. Every round found its mark. Every impact within inches of perfect-ish center. The kind of shooting that took years to develop. The kind of shooting that couldn't be faked. Couldn't be lucky. Could only be the result of thousands of hours of practice and hundreds of missions where missing meant people died. When she stood, there wasn't a trace of strain on her face. No bruising from recoil. No discomfort from the prone position. No shaking hands or rapid breathing. Just calm professional efficiency. Hayes's face had gone pale. Her hands gripped the observation rail so hard the metal creaked under the pressure. "Where did you serve?" The question came out strangled, desperate. "What unit?" "I said I'd prefer not to discuss my previous employment. That's not an option anymore." Devlin's voice had changed, lost its dismissiveness, lost its bureaucratic distance. Now he sounded like a man starting to understand he was watching something significant, something that mattered. "Those shots aren't lucky. That's trained skill, high-level trained skill, the kind that comes from real operational experience." Morrison leaned toward Brooks, his voice barely above a whisper, awed. "Sir, she hasn't broken pattern once since this started. That control, that's operator-level discipline." Brooks nodded slowly. He was putting pieces together. Pieces that formed a picture he didn't like. A picture that suggested this whole situation was about to get much worse before it got better. "Admiral," his voice carried warning, urgency, "I strongly recommend we stop this demonstration and what Commander Stone wasn't backing down. His ego was fully engaged now, committed. He'd started this and he'd finish it. Let her walk away without explaining how a maintenance worker shoots like a scout sniper." He turned to Marin. His voice had taken on that tone, the one that suggested he'd already made up his mind. "Miss Voss, pistol transition drill. Let's see if you're as good with a sidearm." Kowalski set up the drill reluctantly. Mozambique pattern. 2 rounds center mass, 1 round headshot on multiple targets under time pressure. The SEAL standard was 3 seconds for 3 targets. Most shooters took 4 or 5. Some never made it at all. Marin picked up an M9, checked it with automatic precision. Magazine seated, chamber clear, slide release, safety off. The movements so ingrained they were automatic. She could probably do them in her sleep. She stepped to the line, feet shoulder width, weight balanced, hands in proper grip. Everything about her stance screamed professional. "Ready?" Kowalski's voice carried across the range. "Set. Go." The shots came so fast they almost blurred together. Bang, 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 bang. Bang, bang. 3 targets. 3 rounds each. Perfect Mozambique pattern on every target. 2 center mass, 1 headshot. The kind of grouping that suggested she could do this blind. The timer showed 0.9 seconds. Someone in the gallery whispered what everyone was thinking. "That's not possible." But the targets didn't lie. The timer didn't lie. The holes in the paper clustered so tight you could cover them with a playing card. Those didn't lie either, Doctor. Bradford had come down from her office, drawn by the crowd. Now she stood in the back of the gallery, watching with growing certainty. She'd seen those hands before when treating Marin's injuries. Hands with old scars and specific patterns. Rope burns on the palms that had healed years ago. Knife defense marks on the forearms. A particular callus formation that came from thousands of hours of weapon handling. Bradford had done a residency at Walter Reed. Had treated combat veterans for 3 years. She knew what operators' hands looked like. And this woman's hands told stories that her maintenance uniform tried to hide. Webb, desperate to regain some ground, moved forward. His swagger was gone now, replaced by something that looked like panic. "All right, shooting drills are one thing. Any monkey can pull a trigger if you train them long enough. Let's see how you handle CQB. Close quarters battle, room clearing. That requires thinking. Requires tactical awareness. Requires training that can't be faked." Kowalski set up the kill house. The mock-up facility with multiple rooms doors corners every scenario that might be encountered in urban warfare. Targets popped up randomly, some hostile, some civilian. The drill tested decision-making under pressure, tested tactical movement, tested threat assessment. Even experienced SEALs sometimes failed it. Marin walked into the entry point. She paused for just a moment, studying the layout through the doorway, reading the space, understanding the geometry. Then she nodded once, ready. The drill activated. What happened next would be reviewed on camera footage for the next 3 hours by increasingly bewildered tactical instructors who couldn't quite believe what they were seeing. She cleared the facility using techniques that weren't standard military. They were better, more efficient. Movement patterns that minimize exposure while maximizing coverage. She sliced the pie differently, checked corners from unexpected angles, moved through doorways in ways that gave targets less time to acquire her. She identified and engaged 12 hostile targets while avoiding 8 civilian targets, all in 41 seconds. The current base record was 57 seconds. But it was the technique that made Sergeant First Class Davis, the simulation operator, freeze the footage and replay it 3 times. He'd been running this kill house for 8 years, had seen thousands of operators move through it. This wasn't SEAL CQB, wasn't Army, wasn't even Delta Force. That's not any technique I've ever seen. He kept rewinding the footage, watching her move through doorways, the way she moves, the angles she takes. Force recon. Brooks's voice was quiet, certain. He'd seen this before. Once, in a classified training video at Quantico, advanced force recon tactics that weren't taught anywhere else, weren't shared with other branches. How does a janitor know force recon tactics? No one had an answer. Hayes stepped down from the observation area. Her face was a mask of confusion and anger, and something that might have been fear. She'd spent her entire career fighting to be recognized, fighting to prove herself. And now this woman had just demonstrated skills that exceeded anything Hayes had ever achieved, had done it calmly, had done it without arrogance, had done it like it was nothing special. You need to tell us right now who you are. Hayes' voice shook. This isn't a game anymore. This isn't about proving you can shoot or clear a room. This is about accountability. This is about security. Before Marin could respond, the base PA system crackled to life. Medical emergency, CQB training area. Medical emergency, CQB training area. All qualified personnel respond. The crowd turned, started moving, but Lawson stayed still, watched Marin's face, saw her eyes narrow slightly. The body language of someone who just heard something that didn't add up, something that triggered warnings. They rushed to the training area, found Petty Officer Collins lying on the ground clutching his chest, breathing hard, rapid, uneven chest rise, difficulty breathing, classic signs of tension, pneumothorax. Marin knelt beside him in one smooth motion. Her hands moved across his chest, checking, assessing, fingers finding anatomical landmarks with certainty. Bradford arrived with the emergency medical kit, breathing hard from running. What have we got? 14-gauge needle. Marin's voice was calm, clinical, the voice of someone who'd performed triage under fire. Bradford's eyes widened. That was the correct treatment for tension pneumothorax, but it was an advanced procedure. You know how to perform needle decompression? Yes. Marin took the needle, located the anatomical landmark with her fingers. Second intercostal space mid-clavicular line, the exact spot where the needle needed to enter. But then she paused, her eyes narrowed. She pressed her fingers more firmly against Collins's chest, checked his breathing again, looked at his eyes, at the slight nervousness there. Stand up. Collins looked confused, panicked. I need, stand up. Her voice carried sudden command authority, the voice of an officer who expected obedience. He stood, breathing perfectly fine. Bad acting, Marin said to the room at large. Her voice was flat, cold. Real pneumothorax presents with tracheal deviation. His trachea is midline. Real patients don't grab their chest symmetrically. They favor the affected side. His pupils should be dilated from pain and hypoxia. They're normal. She stood, handed the needle back to Bradford, turned to Braddock, who was standing near the back of the crowd. Did you set this up? The chief's face told the truth before his mouth could form lies. I don't know what you wanted me to perform an invasive procedure on a healthy person so you could charge me with assault. Clever. Almost worked. Lawson had heard rumors about Braddock over the years, equipment going missing from inventory, discrepancies that never quite got explained. Nothing proven, but the kind of whispers that followed dirty chiefs through their careers. Whispers about side deals, about equipment that disappeared and reappeared in markets overseas. Now he wondered what else Braddock was hiding, what else the man was capable of when backed into a corner. Bradford stepped forward, her medical authority overriding military rank. Chief Braddock, if this young man isn't actually injured, we need to have a serious conversation about waste of medical resources, about falsifying emergency calls. Before Braddock could respond, a voice cut through on someone's radio. All personnel be advised, we have incoming VIP General Robert Thornton, commanding General 2nd Marine Division, arriving for surprise inspection. All section heads report to main briefing room in 15 minutes. The crowd began to disperse. The drama interrupted by the sudden need to prepare for a general's inspection. People scattered back to their posts. But Stone wasn't done. Miss Voss. His voice had lost its humor. Now he just sounded tired, cornered. This conversation isn't over. You'll report to my office at 1500 hours to provide a full accounting of your background and qualifications. She met his eyes. With respect, Admiral, I don't report to you. I'm civilian contractor, not active duty. Then consider it a request. His voice carried threat. One you'd be wise to honor if you want to keep your job. She nodded once. 1500 hours, your office. As the crowd dispersed, Lawson approached her cautiously. Ma'am, his voice was low, meant only for her. I don't know who you are, but I served with your father, Garrett Voss, Fallujah 04, Desert Storm 91. And I'm telling you, you might want to have a JAG representative present for that meeting, because this is going somewhere dark. She looked at him, really looked. Saw the gray in his hair, the lines around his eyes, the particular bearing of a man who'd spent decades in uniform. For just a moment, her expression softened, just slightly. Thank you, Chief. I appreciate the advice. Can I ask you something off the record? You can ask. That tattoo on your shoulder, I saw it when your collar shifted during the range work. That's not a random design, is it? Her face went carefully blank, the wall going back up. I need to get back to work, Chief. She walked away, leaving Lawson standing in the corridor, more certain than ever that he'd just witnessed something significant. In his office, Braddock was already making calls, trying to verify Marin's background through unofficial channels. But he was also making other calls, to contacts who operated in darker spaces, to people who dealt in information and violence. Because if this woman was real, if she was everything she appeared to be, then she was a threat, not just to his career, to his freedom, to the side business he'd been running for 3 years, the equipment that disappeared from inventory and reappeared in Syrian markets, the weapons that found their way to people who paid premium prices and asked no questions. If she kept digging, if she kept exposing things, if she became a problem that couldn't be solved through official channels, then he knew people who solved problems through other means. His phone buzzed, a text from one of his contacts, a middleman who moved merchandise through back channels. The message was brief, coded, but Braddock understood it perfectly. Package confirmed, buyers interested, timeline accelerated. He deleted the message, sat back in his chair, stared at the ceiling. Everything was unraveling. The maintenance woman who wasn't a maintenance woman, the inspection that had arrived unannounced, the general who was asking questions, the investigation that was probably already underway even if no one had told him yet. He'd been careful for 3 years, had covered his tracks, had used cutouts and proxies, had made sure nothing could be traced back to him directly. But now there was a wild card, a woman who moved like an operator, who saw things other people missed, who'd already exposed his fake medical emergency with embarrassing ease. What else might she see? What else might she figure out? He needed to know who she was, needed to know what she was capable of, needed to know if she was the kind of threat that required permanent solutions. Hayes sat in her office staring at footage of Marin clearing the kill house. She replayed the movement patterns over and over, the efficiency, the precision. This wasn't someone who dated an operator and learned a few tricks. This was someone who'd done this for real. In situations where mistakes meant death, Hayes had spent her entire career fighting to be taken seriously as a female operator, had endured hell to earn her trident, had pushed herself harder than any man just to be considered equal, had sacrificed relationships and health and years of her life to prove she belonged. And now here was this quiet woman who moved like she'd been born doing it. It offended something deep in Hayes, something she couldn't quite name, something that felt like jealousy, and burning anger and grudging respect all mixed together into an emotion that had no name. She paused the footage, zoomed in on Marin's face during the CQB drill, looking for strain, for stress, for any sign of the pressure that should show when someone's making split-second life-or-death decisions. There was nothing, just calm focus, like she was doing paperwork instead of clearing rooms. Hayes had that same look in combat, had developed it over years of deployments, had earned it through missions that left scars on her soul, and this janitor had it too, which meant she'd earned it the same way, which meant everything Hayes had assumed about her was wrong, which meant Hayes had just spent the last 3 hours participating in the public humiliation of someone who deserved respect instead of mockery. The realization sat in her stomach like lead. Morrison stood in the corridor where it had all started, looking at the wet spot on the floor where the bucket had been kicked over, thinking about the clipboard catch, thinking about every small detail that added up to a picture his instructors had taught him to recognize. Elite operator, someone who'd done the impossible jobs, someone who'd paid the prices most people never had to pay. She'd been invisible for 18 months, working as a janitor, mopping floors, and no one had seen her, no one had known, until today. Until Stone's ego and Braddock's cruelty and Hayes's resentment had pulled back the curtain. Morrison had a bad feeling about what came next, a feeling that said this story wasn't over, was just beginning, and the next chapters were going to be written in ways that changed everything for everyone involved. At exactly 1500 hours, Marin Voss walked into Admiral Stone's office. She'd changed into clean maintenance coveralls. Her hair was still in that same tight ponytail. She looked small, unremarkable, completely out of place in the richly appointed command office. Stone sat behind his desk, flanked by Hayes and Devlin. Webb stood near the door. Braddock lurked in the corner. "Sit." Stone's voice was command. She remained standing. "I prefer to stand, sir." That wasn't a request. "With respect, Admiral, I'm not active duty military. You can't give me orders." His jaw tightened. "Fine. Stand. But you will explain your background, your qualifications, and why you're working as maintenance when you clearly have specialized training. I'd prefer not to discuss my previous employment. And I'd prefer not to have a mystery operative working on my base without full disclosure." He leaned forward. "Here's what I think. I think you washed out of whatever program you were in. Maybe couldn't handle the pressure. Maybe failed the psych eval. And now you're clinging to whatever skills you managed to retain, trying to feel important." Something flickered across Marin's face. Just for an instant, something cold, something that suggested Stone had just made a terrible mistake and didn't know it yet. Then it was gone. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it. A text from a contact labeled only as Dad. 3 words in shaky letters. "Proud of you." She allowed herself the smallest smile before returning her attention to the officers arrayed against her. Before Stone could continue, Chief Warrant Officer Kim burst through the door, slightly out of breath, face pale, holding a tablet. Stone had ordered Kim to run a deep background check hours earlier, had pulled strings, had used every resource available. "Sir, sorry to interrupt, but I have those search results you requested." Stone's expression shifted to interested. "This better be good, Kim. You asked me to run a deep background check on Marin Voss." Kim held up the tablet. His hand shook. "Sir, I found something. Multiple somethings. But there's a problem." "What problem?" "The file is classified, seriously classified. I only got access because General Thornton authorized it. Sir, I need O6 clearance minimum to even open the full record." The room went very quiet. O6 clearance, colonel level and above. The kind of classification that meant national security implications. Devlin stood slowly. "I have O6 clearance. Let me see that tablet." Kim handed it over like passing a live grenade. Devlin's eyes scanned the screen. His face went through confusion, shock, disbelief, and finally something that looked like horror mixed with awe. His hand holding the tablet began to shake. "This can't be right," he whispered. "This can't be right." "What?" Stone demanded. "What does it say?" Devlin looked up at Marin, seeing her completely differently now. "I served with your father in Fallujah, 2nd Battle, November 2004. Master Sergeant Garrett Voss." His voice was thick, choked. "He pulled me out of a burning Humvee, carried me 3 blocks through sniper fire. I owe him my life, and he never told me. Never said a word about you, about what you became." "I had no idea." "Told you what?" Hayes stepped forward. Devlin turned the tablet so they could all see. The classification header was bright red. Top secret, SCI, sensitive compartmented information. Below it a personnel file, and at the top in bold letters, Voss Marin, Captain USMC, Force Recon. The room seemed to tilt. The air seemed to thicken. No, Stone said flatly. That's not possible. They do now. Marin's voice was quiet. Have for years. You'd know that if you kept up with core developments outside the SEAL community. Kim pulled up the next section. Mission history. 73 successful operations. Deployment dates spanning 12 years. Locations still classified. A list of commendations that scrolled on for pages. Navy Cross, 4. Bronze Star, 6. Purple Heart, 7. Along with dozens of other medals and citations. Each one representing a story, a mission, a moment where she'd done something that most people couldn't imagine. And then at the bottom in stark text, status Kaye presumed, Helmand Province, August 2019. She's dead, Webb said stupidly. The file says she's dead. Presumed KIA, Marin corrected, her voice still calm, still steady. Means they didn't find a body. Means I was alone behind enemy lines for 47 days before I made it to friendly forces. Means the Corps declared me dead because statistically, nobody survives that long in that terrain under those conditions. She paused. Let that sink in. Means I proved statistics wrong. Hayes had backed up against the wall, all color drained. You're actually Captain Marin Voss, Force Recon. You actually survived 47 days alone in Helmand. Yes, Devlin's hands were still shaking. Call sign, the file won't load your call sign. That part's redacted. It would be. Marin's eyes met his. Call signs for certain operations stay classified. For operational security. To protect the people who worked with me. To protect the people who might work with me again. Ghost unit. Stone whispered the words. Like saying them too loud would summon something dangerous. Your ghost unit. She didn't confirm, didn't deny, just held his gaze with those calm green eyes. I don't know what you're talking about, Admiral, but everyone in the room knew. Ghost unit, the classification above classification. The operators who did jobs that couldn't be acknowledged, who went places that officially didn't exist. There were 23 Ghost Unit operators in the entire history of Marine Force Recon, and one of them had been mopping floors at Naval Amphibious Base Little Creek for 18 months. Braddock in the corner had gone very still, very pale, the implications crashing down on him like an avalanche. He just tried to frame a Ghost Unit operator. Had just staged a fake medical emergency designed to get her charged with assault. Had just spent the day trying to humiliate someone who could probably kill everyone in this room with her bare hands and disappear before anyone found the bodies. And worse, much worse. If she was Ghost Unit, if she had those connections, those resources, those capabilities, then his side business wasn't just at risk. It was already compromised, already exposed, already over. He needed to leave, needed to run, needed to get out before everything collapsed. But he couldn't move, couldn't speak, could only stand there and watch his world end. Kim pulled up another section. His voice was quiet, almost reverent. Sir, there's more. The reason she's here. He read aloud. Status change, voluntary retirement, compassionate leave granted. Father Master Sergeant Garrett Voss, USMC retired, suffered traumatic brain injury February 2020. Subject requested discharge to provide full-time care. Request granted with honors. Current residence Virginia Beach. Current employment civilian contractor. Naval Amphibious Base Little Creek Maintenance Division. Cleared for Level 5 access due to previous service and ongoing security clearance. The pieces clicked into place, each one falling with the weight of guilt and shame. She wasn't here because she'd failed. She wasn't here because she'd washed out. She was here because her father was dying. The man who'd served 25 years, who'd been wounded in Desert Storm and Fallujah, who'd earned the Navy Cross twice, who'd trained her, raised her, made her into what she became. He was dying from traumatic brain injury, and she'd given up everything to take care of him, had walked away from Ghost Unit, had left a career that most operators would kill for, had taken a minimum wage job mopping floors because it put her 12 minutes from Portsmouth Naval Medical Center. How long? Devlin asked quietly. How long does he have? Marin's mask cracked slightly. Doctors say 4 to 6 months, maybe less now. And you've been here 18 months. You've been watching him decline for a year and a half. Yes, sir. The silence stretched, heavy, oppressive. No one knew what to say. What words could possibly fit this moment? Stone stood slowly, every ounce of arrogance burned away. Captain Voss, I owe you an apology, a real one, in front of the same people who witnessed my behavior. What I did today was inexcusable. I mocked a decorated combat veteran. I forced you to prove yourself. I made a public spectacle of someone who had sacrificed everything for this country. And the whole time, "It's fine, Admiral. It's not fine." His voice was hollow. "Nothing about this is fine." A knock interrupted. A junior officer stuck his head in. "Sorry, sir. General Thornton requests Admiral Stone, Colonel Devlin, and Captain Voss report to the commanding officer's briefing room immediately." They walked through the corridors. Word had spread with the speed of wildfire. The mysterious maintenance worker was Force Recon, was Ghost Unit, was decorated beyond belief, had survived the impossible. Personnel stopped and stared as they passed. Some stood at attention, others pulled out phones. By the time they reached the briefing room, a crowd had gathered outside. Walsh was there, Morrison and Brooks, Dr. Bradford, dozens of others who'd witnessed the confrontation or heard about it secondhand. General Robert Thornton stood at the head of the briefing table, late 50s, weathered face, the look of someone who'd spent decades in combat zones, who'd made hard decisions and lived with their consequences. When Marin entered, he came to attention immediately, rendered a full formal salute, hand crisp, bearing perfect, held until she returned it. The weight of that gesture hit everyone in the room like a physical blow. A two-star general had just saluted first. That only happened for one reason: respect that transcended rank. "Captain Voss," Thornton's voice was formal but warm, "it's an honor to finally meet you in person. Your reputation precedes you, though I wish the circumstances of this meeting were different." "Sir," she stood at attention, every inch the Marine officer despite the maintenance coveralls. Thornton turned to Stone. His expression shifted, went cold. "Admiral, I've reviewed the incident reports from today. Multiple witnesses, video footage, several very concerned personnel who felt something was deeply wrong. Would you care to explain?" Stone's face went pale. "Sir, I had no knowledge of Captain Voss's background or service record. The way she presented was as a civilian employee doing her job, a job she took to be near her dying father. A father who served this country for 25 years and earned his retirement through blood. And you decided appropriate conduct was to publicly mock her, question her credentials, and force her into demonstrating capabilities she clearly wished to keep private." The words fell like hammer blows. "Sir, I didn't know." "I'm not finished, Admiral." Thornton's command presence filled the room. "Do you know why Captain Voss's call sign is classified? Do you know why Ghost Unit designations are kept in sealed files? Because operators at that level make enemies. Real enemies. Nation-state level threats. Terrorist organizations that would pay millions for their identities. Captain Voss's face, her real name, her location, all of that was protected information. And today you forced her to expose her capabilities in front of 50-plus personnel, many of whom recorded it on their personal devices. The implications crashed down. Marin's safety had just been compromised. Her father's safety, all because of ego. "Sir," Marin spoke up, "with respect, the operational security concerns can be managed. I knew the risks when I chose to work here. Today's events were unfortunate, but not catastrophic." "That's generous, Captain, too generous. But it raises the question. Why here? Why this base?" "Proximity to Portsmouth Naval Medical Center. Best traumatic brain injury specialists in the region. My father gets treatment there twice a week. This base is 12 minutes from the hospital and 15 from our apartment." The math was simple. Devlin's voice was rough. "Sir, if I may, I served with Master Sergeant Voss in Fallujah. He was my platoon sergeant. Saved my life twice in that city. And I had no idea his daughter was..." He gestured helplessly. "Nobody was supposed to recognize her, Colonel. That was the point." Thornton gestured to chairs. "Please sit. We need to discuss how we move forward." They sat. An admiral who'd lost his authority, a colonel fighting memories, a general cleaning up a mess, and a woman in coveralls who outranked most of them in every way that mattered. Thornton pulled up a file. "I received a call from JSOC 30 minutes ago. They're aware of today's incident. They're offering options." He clicked through slides. "Option 1, full identity protection protocol. New name, new location. Your father relocated to a facility near whichever base you choose. All medical care covered." Marin shook her head. "That would disrupt his treatment schedule. His doctors at Portsmouth know his case intimately. They understand his specific injury patterns, his medication responses, his triggers. Starting over with new providers could cost him months. He doesn't have months to spare." "Understood. Option 2, enhanced security at current location. Armed protective detail. Surveillance countermeasures. Active threat monitoring. You continue current employment, but with a security footprint that would defeat the entire purpose of trying to live normally. My father is already struggling with memory and cognition. Adding security teams and protocols would confuse him, upset him, make his remaining time harder instead of easier. I can't do that to him. Thornton nodded slowly. Option 3, and this is the one I'm personally recommending. You accept a position as a training instructor here at Little Creek. Official title, official rank recognition, appropriate pay grade. You'd work with SEAL candidates and Force Recon students teaching advanced combat techniques. Hours would be flexible, allowing you to maintain your father's care schedule. And your presence would be explained normalized, making you less of a target because everyone would know exactly who you are and why you're here. Marin considered this. You could see her mind working. Teaching would expose me to hundreds of students. Any one of them could compromise operational security further. True, but they'd be vetted personnel with security clearances. And frankly, Captain, your operational security is already compromised. The question isn't whether we can maintain a fiction that's already been shattered. The question is how we manage the reality that exists now. Hayes spoke up, her voice subdued, all her earlier aggression gone. Sir, if Captain Voss does accept an instructor role, I'd like to request assignment as her liaison officer. I owe her an apology that goes beyond words. I need to make amends for today, for my behavior, for my attitude, for everything I did and said. Noted, Commander. Captain Voss would have final say on that assignment. Thornton looked at Marin. You don't have to decide now. Take 24 hours. Talk to your father if his condition allows. But JSOC needs an answer by 1600 hours tomorrow. I understand, sir. Good. He stood, the briefing shifting to its final phase. Now, regarding today's other participants, Admiral Stone, you'll be issuing a formal apology at tomorrow morning's base-wide formation. You'll explain that you were unaware of Captain Voss's background and that your conduct fell below the standards expected of officers. You'll also be enrolling in a mandatory course on respectful leadership. Yes, sir. Commander Hayes, same apology, same formation. Additionally, you'll be writing a personal letter to Captain Voss detailing exactly how your behavior contradicted the values you claim to represent. That letter will be reviewed by your commanding officer and placed in your personnel file. Hayes swallowed hard. Yes, sir. Colonel Devlin, you're assigned as Captain Voss's primary point of contact for any needs related to her father's care or her own security concerns. You served with Master Sergeant Voss. You know what he sacrificed. Make sure his daughter has everything she needs. Sir, it would be my honor. Chief Braddock, Thornton's voice went arctic. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. You staged a fake medical emergency designed to embarrass and potentially implicate Captain Voss in assault. You physically assaulted a superior officer by kicking her equipment. You've been conducting unauthorized background investigations. He paused. Let the silence build. And we've discovered evidence suggesting you've been involved in equipment theft and black market weapon sales totaling approximately $3.2 million over the past 3 years. You're confined to quarters pending formal court-martial proceedings. Security will escort you from this briefing. Braddock's face had gone gray. Sir, I can explain. No, you can't. Security. 2 MPs entered, flanked Braddock, led him toward the door. As they passed Marin, he looked at her. Really looked at her for the first time. Saw not a janitor, not a target, but an operator who just watched him destroy his own career through arrogance and corruption. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't know. You didn't care. Her voice was quiet, final. That was the problem. You didn't care who I was or what I'd done or why I was here. You just saw someone you thought was beneath you, someone you could use, someone who couldn't fight back. That's not ignorance, Chief. That's character. The door closed behind him. The room felt larger. Thornton dismissed the others but kept Marin behind, waited until the door closed and they were alone. Off the record, Captain, how are you really doing? She took a breath, let her professional mask slip just slightly. Honestly, sir, I'm tired. My father has good days and bad days. On good days, he remembers me, remembers my service, tells stories about when I was little, about teaching me to shoot, about the day I told him I was joining Force Recon. On bad days, he thinks I'm my mother who died when I was 12. The doctors say the injury is progressing faster than they initially hoped. Every week he loses a little more, and I'm watching him disappear piece by piece, and there's nothing I can do except be there, except make sure his final months are comfortable, except honor the man who raised me by being present when he needs me most. I'm sorry. Thornton's voice was gentle, human. He should be proud of your service, of what you've accomplished. He was, before the injury. He showed everyone my commendations even though he wasn't supposed to talk about them. Kept newspaper clippings about force recon operations even though he couldn't tell anyone I was involved. Framed my promotion certificates and hung them in his apartment. Now most days he can't remember I served at all. Sometimes he asks when I'm deploying, and I have to remind him I'm retired. And it breaks his heart every time, like hearing it fresh, like losing me all over again. Her voice remained steady, but her eyes were bright with unshed tears. So, no, sir, I don't want to go back to active duty. I don't want security details or relocated identity. I just want the time I have left with him to be as normal as possible, as peaceful as possible, as full of dignity as his condition allows. Then we'll make that happen. Thornton's voice carried promise. And Captain, what you're doing now, taking care of your father, that's as important as any mission you ever ran. Don't let anyone tell you different. You're honoring the man who made you who you are. That matters. That's what this whole thing is supposed to be about. Thank you, sir. One more thing. Your call sign. The file won't load it for me, but I heard Stone mention Ghost Unit and he looked terrified. I've been in this business 35 years and there are still operations I don't have clearance for. I'm guessing your call sign connects to some of those. She met his eyes. I'd prefer not to discuss it, sir. Fair enough. But if you ever want to talk about anything, my door is open. We take care of our own, even in the ones who don't ask for help. She stood, saluted. He returned it crisply. As she turned to leave, he called out, Captain, Force Recon made the right choice when they selected you. And the Corps lost a damn fine officer when you retired. But we understand why you did it. And we respect that choice. Your father earned this. Earned having you there. Never forget that. The Corps didn't lose me, sir. I'm still a Marine, just serving in a different way. Outside the briefing room, Lawson was waiting. He stood as she emerged, came to attention, the old warrior recognizing the younger one. Ma'am, I know you don't know me well, but I served with your father, Desert Storm 91, Fallujah '04. He saved my life more times than I can count. Pulled me out of an ambush in Fallujah, carried me on his back for 3 miles with a broken leg himself. And I just want you to know, his voice broke. I'm sorry. Sorry for what happened today. Sorry I didn't recognize you sooner. Sorry I didn't stop it before it started. You tried, Chief. You were the only one who did, I noticed. I appreciated it. Your father used to talk about you. Not often, not in detail, but sometimes after bad missions, after we lost people, he'd have this look, this proud but scared look. And he'd say he had a daughter who'd joined Force Recon. Said you were better than he'd ever been. Said it scared him how good you were, how natural it came to you, how you were born for this life in ways he had to learn. Marin's eyes got bright. He really said that. Every word. He was proud, ma'am. So damn proud. Carried your photo in his wallet. Showed it to anyone who'd look. And if he could see you now, see what you're doing for him, see how you're honoring him by being here, he'd be even prouder. She nodded. Couldn't speak for a moment. Morrison approached next. Captain, I'm still learning what it means to be an operator. Still figuring out what this life requires. But watching you today, the way you handled everything with dignity and professionalism, the way you never lost your composure even when people were trying to break you, that taught me more than 6 months of training. Being a good operator isn't about how many push-ups you can do, petty officer. It's about keeping your head when everyone around you is losing theirs. It's about doing the right thing even when the right thing is hard. It's about character. Remember that. Doctor. Bradford stepped forward. I reviewed your medical files with General Thornton's permission. The injuries you sustained during that 47-day evasion. The malnutrition, the infection, the untreated wounds, the psychological trauma. The fact that you're walking, functioning, working, it's remarkable. If you ever need anything medically or just someone to talk to, please don't hesitate. I appreciate that, Doctor. Brooks pulled her aside. Captain, I need to tell you something. About 3 weeks ago, I saw you in the maintenance break room on the phone speaking what I'm pretty sure was Pashto. I almost reported it as suspicious. Now I realize you probably speak multiple languages, and that was just normal for you. 8 languages, actually. She allowed herself a small smile. And yes, I was talking to an old Afghan translator who helped my unit during several operations. He made it to the States with his family, lives in Richmond now. I check in on him occasionally. Make sure he's adjusting. Make sure he has what he needs. Make sure nobody's giving him trouble for being Afghan in a country that doesn't always remember who helped us over there. See, that's what I mean. You're this incredible combination of lethal operator and genuinely good person. It's humbling. She looked at them all, at Lawson and Morrison and Bradford and Brooks, at everyone who'd witnessed her humiliation and were now trying to make it right. And she realized something. Maybe being visible wasn't the worst thing. Maybe having people know who she was didn't have to mean danger. Maybe it could mean community, support, understanding. Maybe after 18 months of being invisible, of being alone, of carrying everything by herself, she could let people help. Thank you. She said it to all of them. Thank you for seeing me. That evening, she drove to Portsmouth Naval Medical Center, took the elevator to the 4th floor, walked down the familiar hallway to her father's room. The nurses knew her now, smiled as she passed. Some of them had been here long enough to watch her arrive twice a week for 18 months, watch her sit with him, talk to him, hold his hand when the confusion got bad, remind him who she was on the days he couldn't remember. Garrett Voss was sitting up in bed, looking out the window at the evening sky. When she entered, his face lit up with full recognition. One of the good days. One of the increasingly rare moments when his mind was clear and sharp and he remembered everything. There's my girl. His voice was rough, weak, but his eyes were bright. My warrior daughter. She sat beside him, took his hand. Hi, Dad. I had a clear day today. Remembered everything. Your mother, your childhood, your service, all of it. The nurses told me there was some excitement at the base, told me people finally know who you are. Yeah, it got complicated. Good. You shouldn't have to hide. Shouldn't have to pretend you're something less than you are. You earned your rank, earned your reputation, earned the right to stand tall. I'm here to take care of you, Dad. That's what matters. I know, and I love you for it. But sweetheart, you gave up so much to be here. Your career, your life, everything you worked for. You did that for me. You would have done the same. In a heartbeat, but that doesn't make it easier to accept. Doesn't make it easier to watch you sacrifice your future for my past. She squeezed his hand. You're not my past, Dad. You're my present. You're what matters right now. And when you're gone, when this is over, then I'll figure out what comes next. But right now, I'm exactly where I need to be. He smiled. That familiar smile she'd grown up with. The one that said he was proud. That said he understood. Lawson called me today. Old Warhorse managed to figure out how to use a phone. Told me what happened. Told me how you handled it. Told me you made me look good out there. He served with you. He recognized me. He tried to help. Griffin's a good man. One of the best I ever served with. You trust him, you hear me? When I'm gone, when you need someone who understands, you go to Griffin. He'll take care of you the way I can't anymore. Dad, listen to me while I can still say this clearly, while my mind is still working right. You're the best thing I ever did with my life. Not the medals, not the missions, not the 25 years in uniform. You, raising you, teaching you, watching you become something better than I ever was. That's my legacy. That's what I'm proud of. That's what I'll remember even when I forget everything else. Wow. His eyes were bright now too, father and daughter sitting in a hospital room watching the sunset. Both of them knowing this was one of the last clear conversations they'd have. I need you to promise me something. His grip on her hand tightened. When I'm gone, and it won't be long now, we both know that. When I'm gone, you live. You don't just survive. You live, you laugh, you find joy, you let people in, you let yourself be happy. You've earned that. You've paid enough. Promise me. I promise. And one more thing, when they call you back, and they will, because operators like you don't stay retired when the world needs them. You don't say no because you think you owe me something. You don't say no because you think staying away from the fight honors my memory. You do what's right, what's needed, what only you can do, because that's who you are. That's who I raised you to be, and I'll be proud of that choice too. She couldn't speak, could only nod, could only hold his hand and watch the light fade outside and try to memorize everything about this moment. They sat together as darkness fell, as the hospital settled into its evening routine, as the world continued turning outside. Father and daughter, Marine and Marine, two warriors at different ends of their service. And in that quiet room with machines beeping softly and nurses moving in distant hallways, Maren Voss made a choice. She would accept Thornton's offer, would become an instructor, would teach the next generation, would pass on knowledge earned through pain and sacrifice, and 12 years of missions that most people would never know about. She would honor her father not by hiding, but by standing tall, not by being invisible, but by being seen, not by pretending to be less than she was, but by showing exactly what service meant, what sacrifice cost, what legacy looked like. And when the call came, because it would come, because operators like her didn't stay retired, when the world needed them, she would answer, would do what was right, what was needed, what only she could do, because that's what Marines did. That's what her father had taught her. You served, you sacrificed, you passed the torch. The warrior's path had one more turn, one more mission, one more impossible task. But tonight in this hospital room, holding her father's hand while he remembered who she was just a daughter. And that was enough. That was everything. That was what mattered most. Outside in the parking lot, a black SUV sat with its engine idling. Inside, a man made a phone call, spoke in coded language, reported that the target had been identified, confirmed the rumors, verified the capabilities. The voice on the other end asked a question. The man in the SUV watched Marin through the hospital window, watched her sit with her dying father, watched her be human for just a moment. Yes, he said into the phone. She's everything they said she was, maybe more. Another question. 48 hours, maybe less. The old man doesn't have much time left. A pause, then instructions. Understood. We'll be ready. He disconnected the call, started the engine, drove away into the night. Behind him in that hospital room, Marin Voss sat with her father, unaware that the exposure she'd feared was already happening, that the enemies Thornton had warned about were already moving, that the call she'd been promised was coming sooner than anyone expected. The warrior's rest was ending, the next mission was beginning, and this time everything she loved was at stake. 2 days later, Marin sat in the instructor's office reviewing her acceptance paperwork for Thornton's offer. The position was official now. Captain Voss, training instructor, advanced combat tactics. Start date pending personal circumstances. Her encrypted phone vibrated. The screen showed a number she'd hoped never to see again. Priority Alpha, Executive Order 732-Alpha Night Fox. Compulsory reactivation operation. Broken Arrow asset trapped. Lieutenant Marcus Webb. Location Syrian Monastery Compound. Required your 2017 infiltration route 3 operators, KIA. Report Andrews, AFB 0600 plus 48 hours. Failure to report equals desertion under you, CMJ, Article 85. She stared at the message. Webb, the man who'd mocked her 3 days ago, now trapped in Syria. In the monastery she'd infiltrated 7 years ago using a climbing route only she knew. A route that required someone's small technical climbing skills, ghost unit trained. Her father's words echoed. When they call you back, you don't say no because you think you owe me something. She made the call to JSOC. Negotiated terms, 1 mission, guaranteed return to retirement, her choice of team. Admiral Patterson's voice was grave. Captain, we wouldn't ask if there was any other option. Webb's team discovered evidence of weapons trafficking. Chief Braddock's operation went deeper than we thought. Webb has transaction records, supplier lists, buyers. If that intelligence falls into hostile hands, it compromises operations across the entire theater. Braddock alerted them, didn't he warn his buyers that we were investigating? We believe so, which means the hostiles know a rescue is coming. They're waiting. Marin closed her eyes, saw her father in that hospital bed, saw the light in his eyes when he recognized her, heard his voice telling her to live, to serve, to do what only she could do. I need 4 people. Morrison, Lawson, Sienna Cade from Force Recon, Chris Silva as medic. Lawson is 62 years old, Captain. He served with my father. He knows what this means. And I need someone who won't quit when it gets bad. Age doesn't change that. You have 48 hours. Briefing at Andrews tomorrow morning. She disconnected. Sat in silence for a long moment. Then she drove to Portsmouth Naval Medical. Her father was awake. Clear. Like he'd been waiting for her. They called, didn't they? He asked. She nodded. Couldn't speak. Good, that's good. He squeezed her hand. You go save that boy, even if he doesn't deserve it, because that's what we do. That's who you are. Dad, I don't want to leave you. What if I die while you're gone? He smiled, peaceful, accepting. Then I die knowing my daughter is out there being the warrior I raised. That's enough. That's everything. She stayed with him until midnight, memorizing his face, his voice, the way his hand felt in hers. Then she drove to Andrews Air Force Base. Morrison arrived first, young, eager, nervous but determined. "Ma'am, whatever you need, I'm ready." Lawson came next, moving with the careful precision of a man who kept himself fit but couldn't quite hide 62 years of wear. "Your father would want me here, so I'm here." Sienna Kate arrived in full gear. 31, female force recon, specialist in technical climbing. She looked at Marin with respect, recognition, one operator to another. "I've heard the stories about you, about Helmand, about Ghost Unit. It's an honor." Silva completed the team. Combat medic, Syria veteran. He'd seen bad situations before, knew what failure looked like, knew what was at stake. Marin briefed them on the monastery, the 847-foot cliff face, 3 overhang sections, 153-foot traverse with no protection, the route she'd used in 2017, the route that had nearly killed her then and might kill them all now. "We insert at 2200 hours, climb at night, reach the monastery by 0400, extract web, back down before sunrise at 6:30. Miss that window, and we're trapped inside a hostile compound at daylight with every enemy in the region looking for us." "Ma'am," Morrison asked, "what if we don't make the climb in time?" "Then we improvise, adapt, overcome. Standard Marine Corps problem solving." They flew through darkness. C-130 to staging area. Helicopter insertion 5 miles from target. 3-hour approach through rocky terrain that wanted to break ankles. At 22:30 hours, they reached the base of the cliff. Marin looked up. The rock face stretched into darkness above them. Vertical. Impossible. Waiting. "Chief Lawson, you sure about this?" "Did mountain warfare in Desert Storm. Bosnia winter ops in 95. I'm old, ma'am, not dead." She smiled despite everything. "All right, Morrison, you're second, Cade third, Silva fourth, Lawson anchors. I lead. We move steady. We move smart. Nobody takes risks. Nobody heroes. We all come home." She clipped into the rope and began to climb. The first 300 feet went smooth, rock solid, handholds where she remembered them, the muscle memory of 7 years ago guiding her hands. Then they reached the first overhang. The rock jutted out at a 15-degree angle. Climbers had to essentially hang it upside down while moving laterally. In daylight with modern equipment, it would be challenging. At night in full combat gear, it was nearly impossible. "Hold position," she whispered into comms. "I'm crossing first to set the traverse line." She swung out onto the overhang, felt her core engage, arms burning with the strain of supporting body weight plus gear at an impossible angle. Her right hand found purchase on a rough patch. Left hand reached, found nothing. Reached again. There. Halfway across, her grip slipped. For one heart-stopping moment, she dangled by 3 points of contact. The void pulling at her back. Gravity winning. Then training took over. Pivot. Find new hold. Continue. She reached the far side. Secured the safety line. Traverse line set. Come across one at a time. Morrison went first. Young muscles moving with controlled aggression, made it across in 90 seconds. Cade crossed next. Her movement so smooth she barely disturbed the rope. Natural talent meeting expert training. Silva followed. Solid, steady, professional. Then Lawson. 20 feet into the traverse, his foot slipped. He swung wide. Slammed into the rock face. Marin heard his grunt of pain through the comms. "Chief, you good?" "Just remembering why I retired, ma'am." But he maintained grip, repositioned, completed the traverse with determination that would have made any drill instructor proud. They continued. 400 feet, 500, 600, each pitch harder than the last. At 700 feet, they reached the crux. The 53-foot horizontal traverse on a ledge so narrow climbers had to sidle along with their backs to vertical drop and faces inches from rock. No safety line possible. One slip meant death. Marin went first, moved with the precision of someone who'd done this before and knew exactly how close to disaster she was operating. 30 feet across, 40, 50. Her right foot found the platform. She exhaled. Traverse complete. Come across. Take your time. Do not rush. If you slip, you die and the mission fails. Morrison came across. Too fast, but young grip strength kept him alive. Cade moved with calculated precision, testing each foot placement before committing weight. Silva crossed like walking on a sidewalk. Experience translating into calm. Lawson started across. At 20 feet, a rock chip broke under his foot. He froze, pressed flat against the wall. Chief reset. Find the hold 6 inches to your left. He moved slowly, found it, continued. 40 feet, 50, 52. He reached the platform and Marin pulled him the final inches onto solid ground. Good, she said simply. The final 147 feet were technical but manageable. At 0347 hours, they reached the cave entrance, 13 minutes ahead of schedule. They moved through forgotten passages, following Marin's mental map from 7 years ago. Every turn where she remembered, every passage leading exactly where it should, until they reached Webb. He was in a maintenance alcove, leg wrapped in makeshift bandages, rifle covering their approach, eyes hollow with exhaustion and pain. Captain Voss, he could barely speak. I'm sorry for everything, but you need to know. This mission, it wasn't just about weapons trafficking. Braddock was selling to Syrian militants. We found the evidence, transaction records, supplier lists, buyers. He sent us here to silence us. 3 operators already dead because of him. Where's the evidence? Webb held up an encrypted drive. Everything's here. Enough to bring down a network that goes beyond Braddock. Congressional involvement. Defense contractors. This goes high. Then we get you and that drive out. They moved back through the passages, but as they approached the exit, Marin heard something that made her blood freeze. Voices, Arabic, multiple contacts, spreading through the monastery. Braddock hadn't just alerted them to the rescue. He'd given them the timing, the route, everything. We're compromised, Kate whispered. Marin calculated. 300 meters open ground between them and the extraction point. Dawn breaking. Multiple hostile squads already moving into position. Their helicopter would be overhead in 43 minutes. Would wait exactly 2 minutes. Then it would leave whether they were aboard or not. Chief Lawson, Marin said quietly, I need you to position at that boulder formation. Provide suppressing fire while we move Webb to the extraction point. Ma'am, that's a suicide position. It's a holding position. You give us 30 seconds, then you displace and follow. We'll cover your movement. Lawson looked at her, saw her father in her eyes, saw the same determination, the same willingness to do what needed doing. Aye, ma'am. They burst from the monastery entrance at 0602 hours. Dawn light breaking over the mountains. The helicopter visible in the distance. Hostile fire erupted immediately. Rounds kicking up dirt, snapping past heads. Lawson positioned behind the boulder. Opened fire with controlled bursts. Professional, precise. Making every round count. Morrison and Kate half-carried, half-dragged Webb. Silva provided covering fire. Marin coordinated movement like conducting an orchestra. Lawson displaced. The old warrior moved, rolled from cover, sprinted 10 meters, took up new position. They leapfrogged across open ground. Lawson and Marin providing suppression while the others moved. Then roles reversed. 200 meters, 150, 100. Lawson took a round to the shoulder, stumbled but kept moving. Chief, you hit. Just a scratch, ma'am. Keep moving. 50 meters. The helicopter was landing. Rotors kicking up dust, creating screen. 25 meters. Another burst of fire. Morrison went down, round through his thigh. Cade grabbed him, kept moving. 15 meters. Marin turned, laid down covering fire. Full magazine, making the enemy duck, making them hesitate. Go, go, go. Cade and Silva loaded Webb aboard. Morrison followed. Blood streaming down his leg but mobile. Lawson reached the helicopter, turned to provide cover. Marin sprinted. Final 10 meters. Rounds snapping past. One creased her arm, burned like fire. She ignored it. 5 meters. She dove through the helicopter door. Lawson grabbed her collar, pulled her in. The helicopter lifted off. Rounds pinging off armored hull. Rising, rising. Clear. They'd made it. All of them. Lawson slumped against the bulkhead, blood spreading across his shoulder, but grinning. Your father would be proud. Stubborn runs in the family. Marin checked his wound, through and through, clean. He'd be fine. Morrison's leg needed pressure, but the bleeding was controlled. Webb clutched the encrypted drive like a lifeline. They'd completed the mission, retrieved the evidence, brought everyone home. 12 hours later, Marin walked into Portsmouth Naval Medical Center, her arm bandaged, exhaustion in every step. She reached her father's room. The nurse's expressions told her everything before she opened the door. Master Sergeant Garrett Voss had passed away peacefully in his sleep, 800 hours that morning, while she'd been en route back to Andrews. She sat beside his bed, took his still warm hand, and finally let the tears come. 3 weeks later, Arlington Cemetery, full military honors, Marine Corps pallbearers, 3 volley salute. The flag folded with precision and presented to Marin. Hundreds attended. People her father had served with. People he'd saved. People whose lives he'd touched. Lawson stood at attention through the entire ceremony, arm in sling, refusing to sit despite his age and injury. When it ended, he approached her, saluted. "He was the finest Marine I ever knew, ma'am, and so are you." Secretary of Defense Morrison arrived afterward, offered the Medal of Honor for Operation Broken Arrow. Marin looked at the medal case, at the blue ribbon, the star, the symbol of everything she'd done and sacrificed. "No, sir. Captain, Ghost Unit operators don't receive public recognition. It compromises operational security for those still serving. My father taught me that some battles are won in silence. Some victories can't be celebrated publicly. That's the cost of this life. I accept that cost. The medal will be placed in your classified file." "That's acceptable, sir." She returned to Little Creek, accepted the instructor position. Part-time, flexible hours. On her first day, she stood before 20 SEAL candidates and Force Recon students. "Before we begin, I want to tell you about Master Sergeant Garrett Voss, 25 years service, 2 Navy Crosses. He taught me that being a warrior isn't about how many enemies you kill. It's about how many friends you save. It's about doing the right thing when no one's watching. It's about living with honor so you can die with dignity." She paused. Let that sink in. "He also taught me that the best warriors are invisible. They don't seek glory. They don't need recognition. They do the job because it needs doing. Then they go home. They live quiet lives. They take care of their families. And when the nation calls again, they answer, not for medals, not for fame, but because that's what warriors do." Lawson assisted as senior instructor, the old guard passing knowledge to the new. Her father's photo sat on her desk. Beside it, the folded flag from Arlington, and a coffee mug with a saying her father had loved: "Earn, never given." Morrison recovered, returned to duty, carried the lessons she'd taught him into every operation. Webb testified before Congress. Braddock's network collapsed. 17 people indicted. 3 congressmen resigned. Defense contracts worth billions canceled. The evidence Webb had carried out of Syria changed everything. Hayes wrote her letter. 3 pages of genuine remorse and hard-earned understanding. It sat in her personnel file, a reminder that assumptions have consequences. Stone completed his respectful leadership course, became a better officer for it. 6 months later, Marin received another encrypted message. She read it, smiled, deleted it. Then she walked to her father's grave, placed flowers, sat on the grass. "They're calling again, Dad. Another impossible mission, another chance to make a difference. You tell me to go, to serve, to do what only I can do." The wind rustled through the trees, carried the scent of fresh-cut grass and distant rain. "But not yet. Not today. Today I teach. I pass on what you taught me. I make sure the next generation knows what it means to be a warrior, what it costs, what it's worth." She stood, saluted the headstone. "Semper Fi, Dad, until we meet again." She walked back to her car, back to the base, back to the classroom where young operators waited to learn from someone who'd done the impossible and lived to teach about it. The warrior's path continued, silent, invisible, eternal. But for now, for today, she was exactly where she needed to be. Teaching, honoring, remembering, living the life her father had died believing she would live. A life of purpose, of service, of quiet dignity and unshakable honor. The mission continued, and Captain Marin Voss, Ghost Unit Force Recon call sign, Night Fox, was ready, always ready. The end.